Captain Midnight.
This video is brought to you by Brilliant. Okay, so I want to jump right into this. The Eternals is a frustrating movie. I don't mean that in a completely bad way. There are so many concepts and ideas here, so many characters who the film tries to build an emotional story arc for, that I think ultimately it kind of buckles under its own weight. I'll say right up top that this is a movie that I at least respect more than something like Black Widow, which fumbles a fairly straightforward prequel story. I found myself kind of admiring how ambitious it was in a lot of ways, but I think it tries to do so much that it ends up shortchanging a lot of the characters and ideas that it presents. And that's what I wanted to talk about this week. A bit of what I like, what I don't, and why I think ultimately The Eternals is a bit of a failed experiment. And to talk about it at length, I will be spoiling the movie, so this is your warning.
You have powers you've never dreamed of.
I really don't want to be a hero.
You can't stay neutral forever.
The Eternals is a film that has to condense thousands of years of multiple characters' lives into an acceptable movie running time, and I think that's something it really struggles with, so I'll try to talk about them. This is a large team, 10 characters, none of whom have been introduced in the MCU before, and while Ajak doesn't get all that much screen time, for the other 9, the movie really tries to build a fully fleshed out characterization, while also creating a narrative that builds to the usual third act Marvel battle. The end result is a bunch of interesting threads that I don't think the movie really has time to pull on. As an example, take Kingo, probably the most funny Eternal. He gets lots of the film's one-liners, and since the Eternals defeated the Deviants thousands of years ago, he's created a life for himself as a famous Bollywood actor. For over a century, he's been starring in movies, and passing it off like it's one long film dynasty, pretending to be his own son over and over again to keep it going. I think that's a fun, interesting premise for a character. In fact, it's basically the exact premise of the Twilight Zone episode Queen of the Nile from 1964, about a famous actress who hasn't aged in centuries. But unlike that old episode of TV, which really digs into some of the implications of that, like the actress's supposedly aging mother actually being her daughter, who deeply resents and fears her, there's no time to really take Kingo's life seriously outside of a few straight lines. Which might be fine if this was only a problem for one character, but it kind of feels like an issue for a lot of the cast. Take Phastos, who might have the least screen time of any of the non-Ajak Eternals, not being reintroduced in modern times until nearly the third act of the movie. He has what is, at least on paper, an incredibly sad and emotionally complex story, inventing technologies to help humans that eventually develop into the atom bomb, which seems to result in him giving up all hope in humanity. Somewhere along the way, I guess he changes his mind, and we see him in present day with a husband and children. Again, this just feels like such a missed opportunity. How he got from feeling like humans weren't worth saving to being a dedicated family man is a complete blank here. Like there was just no room to actually tell his story. Even in the present day, there's no real attempt to go deeper into his choice to have a family. None of the other Eternals do, or really even seem to in the past. So how does Phastos feel about the fact that his husband and kids will age and die while he remains exactly the same? Is there a reason that the other Eternals have avoided a commitment like that in their thousands of years on Earth? And is it something that Cersei worries about when dating Kit Harington's character after being involved with another Eternal for thousands of years? Maybe these seem like unimportant questions to you. I don't know, but to me, they seem like vitally important pieces of the puzzle that are missing. The main characters of the film live forever, but seeing the entire development of Earth from its very beginning doesn't seem to have had much of an impact on their personality. Kingo quips his way through everything like so many MCU characters before him. There's no awe or mystery to his personality, no feeling that we're looking at a group of people who have really seen and done it all. At the center of that emptiness, I think, is Cersei, who is at once basically the lead of the film while also being the most underserved. For everyone else in the group, I can at least understand their point of view on the world, even if it feels a little undercooked. Sprite feels trapped as a child and resents the other Eternals a bit because of it. Druig is trying to balance his hatred of the death and destruction of war with the fact that he needs to grant human beings free will. Icarus is torn between his loyalties. Thena is struggling with her overloaded memory. I won't keep listing them, but they at least all have a basic angle, a specific personality and problem. Cersei, she cares about humans, which is a good trait for a superhero. She may be a little conflicted that her and Icarus aren't together anymore, but it doesn't seem to be a huge deal or anything. And she's in a very underdeveloped and pretty boring relationship with a human being. I'm just not seeing a lot of there, and I think it's kind of the most thankless role of all of these characters. She does take over from Ajak and learn the secrets behind the Eternals' creation in one of the movie's more visually impressive scenes, but that's a revelation that shocks the entire team, not just her. If I was to highlight something I do like about the film, I actually think this revelation was a really good one. The idea that they were actually just sent to Earth to help grow the population, to be used as fuel for the next Celestial. But the way they handle this information is kind of baffling. Take Sprite's story. She goes from learning this information, including the fact that Icarus killed Ajak, a woman she clearly looked up to deciding to take his side, even though he makes it clear that it involves killing the rest of the team, and battles the other Eternals. And then, well, thanks to one speech about how she's sad, she's instantly forgiven, and makes the choice to become mortal in age, in a contrived power given to Cersei basically out of nowhere. And by the final scene, they're doing light comedy about how she has to go to school now. So anything with actual emotional weight in that story is rushed through so quickly. Instead of being moved, I was more just wondering how all the Eternals were so okay with Sprite being willing to murder them all at the drop of a hat. Icarus' story is given a bit more room to breathe, which I appreciated, but his relationship with Cersei isn't quite as tragic as it could have been. This is a couple that's been together for thousands of years. There are centuries of experiences connecting each other, and I don't get that from these two performances at all. I don't know if it's the actors or the script, but the big betrayal just doesn't land with the impact that it really needed. We're talking about our lead having her lover of thousands of years turn against her and try to murder her and the rest of their family. But it never feels that way. There's something missing in their chemistry, which really subtracted from that impact. On a story level, this movie just seems like it's in such a rush to cram in as much as it can that nothing really has any room to breathe. There's a lot of things thrown out there, like Thena losing her mind, or Makiri's complete retreat from the world for thousands of years, that seem pretty promising, like they could have been used to plant the seeds of great characters, but there's just no time for any of it. Makiri has been living on their ship for centuries, seemingly bored and totally isolated. So does that change or impact her character in any way? Not really. She picks up her flirtation with Druig right away and comes across as exactly the same. The most we get from her years of isolation is a joke about DVD players. And that just seems like a huge disappointment when I feel like I'm more interested in these characters' thoughts and feelings than the screenwriters of the movie were. Now, there is some nice set pieces, and I thought the sheer scale of the Celestials was pretty amazing, especially on an IMAX screen. It felt massive and cosmic, which seemed appropriate considering it's Jack Kirby source material. That might have been lost if this was a series, but a TV show is sort of what it feels like this cast of characters needed. Some room to really get to know them in a way that it felt like the movie was often attempting. That scene where Phastos is crying about the atomic bomb would have functioned so much better in a story that actually gave us more than 10 minutes of Phastos screen time before it happened. Instead, it sort of feels completely out of nowhere, and something the movie really skims over when it establishes his family. Which doesn't feel fair to this character, who seems like he has the most interesting parts of his story told off-screen. The Icarus betrayal is probably the biggest bombshell that the movie drops, even if it wasn't exactly a shocking twist. I mean, these days, it's way more surprising to find a riff on Superman that isn't the bad guy. What I found a bit more surprising than that was the deviants actually becoming intelligent and learning to speak. That was a nice touch, and it gave the deviants an actual point of view that was well communicated, even as they continued to be an obstacle for the heroes. For the most part though, when I think about the Eternals now, all I can think of is wasted potential. There were good ideas here, characters that seemed like they were worth exploring, but the commitment to hitting all the usual Marvel action beats and trying to tackle so many characters really hampered this thing. There's things to like here, and the moments that do work well, but in the end, I think the film bit off so much more than it could chew, leaving us with a story that doesn't manage to hit those emotional high points that it was aiming for. These characters have potential, but trying to build out so many complex, century-spanning stories at once just wasn't a good idea.
Laugh a little louder, go for it, greater. We can show you how to win.
Anyway, if you want to remind yourself that humans can actually do some really cool stuff and not all of our most important technology was developed by robots that never age, why not try some STEM-focused challenges on Brilliant? Okay, I'll admit that probably wasn't my smoothest segue, but Brilliant does have some amazing stuff. Their new logic course is great, and is part of an effort to turn up the interactivity on the platform even more. So Brilliant hands you the tools you need to tackle so many STEM topics. This isn't about memorizing formulas that you just repeat back on a piece of paper. Brilliant is structured around you learning by doing, at your own pace and on your own schedule. So it's never been easier to tackle these subjects head on. So to build your knowledge, go to brilliant.org/midnight and try it for free. Oh, and also, the first 200 people to go to that link will get 20% off the annual premium subscription. That's brilliant.org/midnight.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once, because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started, because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.